Having a pretty design is not just about looking good. It's about strategically communicating to your audience and building that trust, building that rapport, and showing that you are a professional and trustworthy business. And so I want to show you how you can use design well and the design mistakes you're probably making that are costing you your credibility, particularly on social media. But these design principles will apply across everything that you're designing, whether it's a lead magnet or presentation, flyer, anything at all. So let's dive in. So hi, if we haven't met before, my name is Jacqui and I am a graphic designer who loves teaching business owners how they can create their own incredible brand and graphics, and including really strategic graphics that are going to help to grow your business. And I've got some mistakes today that I want to share with you that are going to help you to actually start looking the part. These are really great and I hope that they are so helpful for you. I've got 4 mistakes I want to share with you. Plus, if you hang around to the end, there is a bonus tip that I want to share with you as well, which is one of the easiest, quickest fixes, but looks so bad when you do it wrong. So let's dive in. Mistake number 1 is making people scroll right on past you. It's your graphics are feeling too overwhelming and they're not wanting to stop. When you create graphics and people are seeing you on social media, if things feel overwhelming, they're not going to want to have a look. They're going to think life is already too overwhelming enough. I'm going to keep on moving past. And so you're getting scrolled past. So I want to show you a graphic here that is doing the wrong thing. I want you to take a look at it. You can see I've got top 7 tools for online business owners. There is a lot of things that this graphic is doing well, but there's just too much happening. So this mistake is just all about busyness. There is too much going on in your design and people are just feeling overwhelmed when they have a look at it. This text is a little bit too small, especially for being shown on Instagram. This is going on your screen on your phone. And there's just a lot happening. The design feels like, whoa, there's lots happening. And obviously people will still look at this. You'll get the couple of people that will, but we want graphics that are so easy for our audience to consume that they don't have to think twice about, oh, this looks interesting, I want to stop. And so the way that you can do this the right way is a version that I've actually done on my own Instagram, and I've made it into a carousel. So it's got all the exact same content and actually a little bit more because I've got more room, and I've just displayed that text and everything in a way where I've split it over like 7 different slides, plus a call to action slide, plus an intro slide, plus a cover slide. It didn't take me a huge amount to design because I just pretty much duplicated each page and changed the text in each page, but it has made that content so much easier to consume. And this post actually performed really well and people saved it, people commented because it was easy to consume. It was a journey, people got to go through it. And so when you're designing your posts, make sure you're not making it too busy. A few ways you can do this is, as I just did, I split the information over a carousel so there's more space for people to use. You also can actually just put a lot of your information into the caption. You don't have to have all of the information ever existed on that 1-page graphic. You can split things over the carousel, pop it into the caption, or maybe not share it at all. I think sometimes we share too much information and it actually could be split over even maybe multiple posts. You're just getting all your good content out in one post when you could split it up. And so keep an eye on your designs. Make sure that it's really clear that there's one main point people can look at, and then invite them to scroll, invite them to read the caption, invite them to participate elsewhere instead of having a graphic that's just so big and overwhelming. You definitely can still have like posts that have just a few dot points on them, and you'll see some examples of these soon. It means that if you've got a ton of information, cull it back, put in the caption, or make it into a carousel. Mistake number 2 means that you are confusing your audience, that the graphics are just not looking correct because of a lack of alignment. And so I want to show you this graphic here. It's just get your free guide today. There's some images there, there's some text there, but it's all feeling quite confusing to look at. It's feeling just haphazard and a bit all over the place. It's not feeling grounded. It's not feeling connected. And so what we need to do when we're creating our graphics is actually what I call create sections. Creating sections on our graphics helps our information to sit in different places. So if you see this graphic, I've split the information up into multiple different sections. There's a really clear level of hierarchy where this text is quite large and beautiful. And we've got these are all joined together and this is joined together. So if I show you the before and after, you can see that everything is kind of feeling haphazard. What I call it is it's disconnected. Things aren't connected to each other. They're kind of floating in their own space. And when things float in their own space, they become their own focal point. And so our eye doesn't know where to look. There is too many separate things to look at. So our audience is getting overwhelmed. They're getting confused of what they're actually looking at. So we want to use techniques like grouping and sections to create these different sections to make our audience know where to look and step them through so that things aren't overwhelming. So you can see here, I've actually grouped these 3 things together. So it just is in one complete chunk together. We don't have to look separately at this, then look separately at this, then look separately at this. Our brain's like, cool, a thing. We can pay attention to that and then move on because it's not the most important part of this graphic. We've got the get your free guide today. I've just done the copy update of this, so Build Your Online Business free guide. That just helps people to draw attention to what they actually care about, because no one cares about a free guide unless they know what the free guide's about. This free guide is about building your own business, and then they can see it's a free guide. That's a whole other topic. I've actually got a whole video on hierarchy, which is what this concept is. I'll link that now because it's very, very much worth a watch, and probably the biggest design mistake I see people make. So I've also done that heading, and I've just these dot points, I've made them into different check marks so it's a bit easier to consume, and I've aligned it well. You can see that the alignment of here, this is down here, this is aligned not to anything, and the website is not aligned to anything. Download now is not aligned to anything. It's all just plonked there. We want to align things to each other. So all of this text here, you can see is all left aligned down this side, and this second column too is fine. And the space here and the space here are the same. So it feels grounded and even. And again, with this, it's aligned centered to the design. It's aligned within this section here, and it's feeling like it's grouped together with a section. So what I mean by sections is you can see I've got this colored background here and this colored background here. Those are different colored background sections, and that just clumps your information into different sections. Again, this is a bit of a section, and these dot points are a bit of a section. It's creating areas that we are directing people to look at, so it makes your design easier to consume. And then I've added the download now, but I've connected it to this graphic here. So again, it's not sitting by itself and getting distracting. It's kind of being a part of that graphic and helping people to know where to look. You want them to look at this and then look at this and then look at this. You don't want them to think, oh, and bounce around. Those sections and that grouping helps to aid that. So the next mistake really makes your audience feel really cramped and makes your brand look unprofessional. And so you can see with this graphic here, this is one of the biggest common mistakes that I see people do, because it happens nearly every graphic they make. And it's because things are just too close to the edges. There's not enough margin and things are too large. For example, what's wrong with this graphic is there is not enough space along these edges here, and this swipe is far too large. It doesn't need to be that large. So if you see this example here, there is margin around the edges. That margin around the edges helps your design to not feel cramped, and it is one of the quickest ways for your design to look professional. So if you see these two examples, this is quite cramped around the edges. I could have made this worse. I really struggled to make these bad. I could have made this worse, but this one here is like, you can still read this text. It's still large enough. You could have even made it this large and brought it up on the top and bottom if you needed that more room. But having things really close to the edges makes your design feel really cramped and unprofessional. And so I've made the swipe smaller, brought things in from the edges, and I've even highlighted memorable here just to help people to, like, you're just like, oh, cool, I want a memorable brand. And so it draws your attention to that one spot in the graphic. I've even brought the white GD down from the top to make sure that that's not making the design feel too cramped and close to the edges. I don't know why the design feels more professional when it's got that space, but it does. And it's one of the things that took me the longest to learn as a designer, because I love filling in all the gaps and making things close to the edges. But that is what will unaid your professionalism of your graphics. So when you're creating your graphics, just make sure you're leaving edges and margin around everything, whether it's margin around the edges of your actual graphic, or even margin if you add a box into your graphic, make sure that the text inside that box is away from the edges of the box. Just giving that edging and that space just opens up your design. And mistake number 4, which you definitely want to be avoiding, is making people give up on reading your content. If they're scrolling your social media and they see your graphic and then they see it and they don't want to read it, and then because they're wanting to give up on it, we do not want that, because people are not going to be engaging in your content, not going to be forming that connection with you. And so this graphic here, what's wrong with it? What is wrong with this graphic? You'll see that the text is unreadable, or at least hard to read. Sometimes text isn't unreadable, it's just hard to read. And that again makes people give up. Unless they're a really, really committed follower of your page, they're not going to work hard to read the graphics. We need to make things easy for them to consume, which is why all of these tips I've shared with you today are going to be helpful. As a person designing the graphic, we know what the text says. So it's really hard for us to actually be like, oh, is this text readable? Because I just typed it out. Of course it's readable. I know what that says. So you need to make sure you're going back and always checking the readability of your graphics. And the biggest thing around this is color and font choice. And so if your colors and your fonts are making your graphics hard to read, you need to change them, or you need to use them differently. So say, for example, with this post, this text here, this cursive text is way too hard to read. It should not be used in long chunks and sentences because it's impossible to see. And then the new podcast episode, that's not too bad, but the contrast between the background and the foreground is just not quite strong enough, especially if someone is viewing your post on their mobile phone screen with the darkness dimmed right down. As a new mum, I'm often looking at my phone in the dark, and I put my brightness down, and I can't read so many posts because the contrast just isn't there, let alone those that have poor eyesight. We want to make sure we're appealing to them as well, and we're being able to be accessible. And so making sure that the contrast of your text is high enough. So by contrast, I mean the text is dark enough and the background is light enough, or vice versa, so that your text is readable. And so here's an example of what you should have done. I've just darkened off the text a little bit, and I've made the font more readable. It's slightly less pretty, but it's readable, because having a pretty design means nothing if people aren't actually reading it. So if you compare these two, you can see the difference between the readability of them. If you're just scrolling your social media, you're going to see and be able to read it so much quicker. And even this background bit here, I've added a white background behind my name here just so that it's even more readable. I've made this text a bit darker and a tiny bit bolder, and I've made this text a different font. So again, it's more readable. Always considering that readability. So when you're finished designing a graphic, I even recommend just leaning back, squinting your eyes a little bit and seeing if you can read it, seeing if someone can read that in a really small screen, because that is what's really important, is that people can consume your content. Right. And the last tip I want to share with you, it's a bit of a bonus tip, is avoiding amateur graphics. And that tip is so simple. You just have to not fade your images onto a white background. Fading your images into a white background just makes your images look washed out and pale and yuck. And it's something that most people do when they're first creating graphics. So it looks a bit amateur. It doesn't look like a professional did it. And so you can do the exact same thing of fading an image into the background if you want to do that. But fading it into a color is far more effective. And so just using one of your brand colors, like my brand color is purple. So I've just faded the image of myself into the background, into the purple, and changed my text color to make sure that it's readable. And that graphic looks far more professional, far more polished, and far more clean. So that little tip can really amplify your professionalism in just changing the color. Just change the color. It'll be more attractive, be more professional, and it's just as easy to work on. So I hope you found those tips helpful. Let me know which one was your favorite. Just please apply these and you'll just be amazed at how they change your graphics. I get so many people saying to me so much of the time, Jacqui, my graphic just doesn't quite look right. Usually it's one of these mistakes people are making. So try those things. Just increase the readability of your fonts, make sure that they're super readable. And just a bonus tip, don't use cursive fonts in all caps. They're not designed for that. They're designed to be flowing and in lowercase or sentence case. Just keep them like that. And if you're going to use cursive text, just use it for a word or two, not a full sentence, unless it's a really, really readable cursive font. And then there's that tip of making sure there's margin and white space around your graphics, as well as using grouping and sections to make sure your content is really easy to consume, and just making sure your graphics aren't too busy, that there's not too much information that's going to overwhelm your audience and put them off looking at your graphics. So thank you for joining me. Let me know your favorite tip in the caption below. Make sure if you haven't already, you hit that like and subscribe button, and I'll see you next week for another video. Bye.